$80 billion from SNAP. The logic is hard to follow. By leaving millions without health care and struggling to buy groceries, higher education will apparently just become more accessible. It is no wonder that when the American people finally had the chance to see what was in this hideous bill, it was so unpopular that my Republican counterparts had to rebrand
last 6 months and say because our reforms, all these things are happening. We're now about to take care of that. I think the biggest thing that I'm concerned about is how little we know in our country about capitalism. We are the #1 destination in the world because of something called capitalism. Now, just quickly, what does capitalism mean, and what does it mean to this industry here? It's about return on investment. It's competition. It's merit.
Ilhan Omar thought this hearing would be easy. The plan was to pin America's education disaster on Republicans. But then Burgess Owens stepped in and completely changed the direction of the conversation. Instead of defending the system, he asked the question nobody wants to answer. After decades of Democrat influence over education, why are students buried in debt? And why do universities keep making more money while student performance keeps getting worse? Yeah, the room got tense really fast. Subscribe, because this is the part the mainstream media never wants you to hear.
That their solution in the one big beautiful bill will somehow make college cheaper for working families. This is the same bill that cut $1 trillion out of Medicaid and over $180 billion from SNAP. The logic is hard to follow. By leaving millions without health care and struggling to buy groceries, higher education will apparently just become more accessible. It is no wonder that when the American people finally had the chance to see what was in this hideous bill, it was so unpopular that my Republican counterparts had to rebrand the name. But just because you put working families in the title doesn't mean you are not screwing them over. The reality is there is no amount of sugarcoating that can undo the damage that will be done by this disastrous legislation.
I want to start off with just, first of all, agreeing, Ms. Morgan, with your comments about how bad things are. Explosion of tuition, enrollment in which kids come in, they enroll, they quit, they leave with debt they'll never pay off, with job skills they'll never have, and not be able to really build the American dream. But this isn't from the last 6 months of the Family Working Tax Plan. It's from the last 16 years, when in 2010, President Obama, through the Affordable Care Act, took everything from the private sector and put it into the government. So the government has controlled this for the last 16 years. We cannot look at the last 6 months and say because our reforms, all these things are happening. We're now about to take care of that. I think the biggest thing that I'm concerned about is how little we know in our country about capitalism. We are the #1 destination in the world because of something called capitalism. Now, just quickly, what does capitalism mean, and what does it mean to this industry here? It's about return on investment. It's competition, it's merit, it's value, and the product of all that is profit. Now, if it's a good program, there's a lot of profit, which it should be. It should spread throughout the entire country. People should be wanting to take advantage of it. If it's a terrible product, it should go broke. What we're finding out is that the government is insulated from this concept. They can have a terrible competition, no value, no merit, and still make a lot of profit off the customer, the students, who pay their life's blood for the rest of their life trying to pay off loans. So we need to get back to teaching that. I think that when I listen to my friends here from Utah and Florida, I'll say this about Utah. We lead the country in terms of small business startups. There's an entrepreneurial concept. There's a culture in which we're trying to figure out how to give the best return on investment to where we're dealing with. And I think the same thing, the way I listen to how you guys are solving things, same thing with Florida. We need to realize that government solutions have never worked. I just came back from Latin America last week. They are realizing after the last couple of years, they want to get away from that stuff. So no, it is not the government that's going to give us the out of this. It's going to be entrepreneurs, innovators, those who truly are in the game for the right reasons. That is to make sure our kids are #1, and not the institutions, not the professors, not those around just kind of sucking in everything they can from government payouts. So I'm excited about the fact that we're having this conversation. We can all agree it's broken. It's cost too much. We're getting too little of a return on investment with our kids coming out, not being prepared to go to work, not being hopeful for their future, being angry about everything. That's not what our education should be about. And the other thing is this: let's just make sure we're transparent enough that everyone realizes they don't have to go into debt to go to four-year college. How about trades? If that could be their way out, if they could look at that as being their way to achieve their dreams, let them go for that. I think it's very helpful that we finally have competition for higher education. It's going to make higher education better. It's going to make sure that the best prove themselves, and outcomes will allow parents to say, okay, I will invest in this, or the kids will invest in this because it'll give me a good return on investment. And if it does not, then that institution should go broke, period. So I'm excited about the fact we're finally, over the last 6 months, putting in reforms. 6 months. So please, as you go back and think about how terrible things are, it's not because of the Republicans' one big, beautiful bill.
Ilhan Omar came into this hearing with a very clear narrative. Republicans, she argued, are making life harder for working Americans because they want to reduce government spending. That was supposed to be the simple takeaway. But Burgess Owens responded with something Democrats never like discussing: accountability. And the second he shifted the conversation toward results and return on investment, the energy in the room noticeably changed. Because the truth is hard to ignore. America is spending more money on education than at any point in history. Billions have been dumped into universities, student aid, subsidies, expanding administrations, and endless government programs. Yet what are Americans actually getting in return? Students are graduating buried in debt, holding degrees that often lead nowhere, and struggling to figure out how they're supposed to build stable lives afterward. That's not a successful system. That's a business model that keeps failing students while pretending everything is fine. Owens pointed straight at the biggest issue. Government-backed systems don't function like competitive markets. There's no real pressure to improve. Schools can produce terrible outcomes and still receive more funding. Universities raise tuition even when graduates can't find jobs. And every time the system disappoints people, politicians demand even more taxpayer money. Think about how absurd that would sound anywhere else. Imagine a company failing customers year after year, and then asking for larger government checks as a reward. Most businesses would collapse under that kind of performance. But colleges seem protected no matter what happens. Then Omar tried connecting higher education to programs like Medicaid and food assistance, bundling multiple emotional issues together into one giant political argument. Owens refused to follow that path. He kept dragging the conversation back to measurable outcomes instead of emotional appeals. And then he said something modern academia absolutely hates hearing. Not every student needs a 4-year college degree. For years, America pushed students toward universities as if that was the only respectable route to success. Trade careers were treated like lesser options. Meanwhile, electricians, welders, mechanics, plumbers, and HVAC workers are building solid careers and earning real incomes, while countless college graduates are stuck making huge loan payments every month for degrees with little market value. Somehow, society became more focused on prestige than practical results. Owens also highlighted a broader cultural problem. He emphasized innovation, entrepreneurship, discipline, and merit, ideas that increasingly clash with modern political thinking centered more on redistribution than achievement. And while schools continue adding administrators, consultants, departments, and bureaucracy, actual academic performance keeps declining. Reading levels are dropping, math scores are falling, writing skills are weakening. Despite spending more money every single year, students are learning less. That's the contradiction nobody can fully defend. If throwing money at education solved everything, American students would dominate the world academically by now. But instead, the system keeps growing larger, more expensive, and less effective. Owens even hinted at a much bigger conversation conservatives are beginning to have openly. Maybe the problem isn't just colleges. Maybe the entire education structure needs serious change. Kids spending all day staring at screens clearly isn't producing better outcomes. Endless administration isn't helping. Flooding classrooms with technology hasn't solved the problem. Automatically passing struggling students through the system hasn't worked either. Standards matter. Discipline matters. Merit matters. Because competition forces improvement. Some ideas succeed while others fail. Some schools perform better than others. Some teachers are more effective. Systems that consistently fail shouldn't be endlessly protected from criticism or consequences. And that's why Burgess Owens completely shifted this debate. He moved the conversation away from political slogans and emotional talking points and brought it back to one thing: results. Because if students are graduating more frustrated, less prepared, financially trapped, and overwhelmed after decades of government solutions, then maybe the real issue isn't a lack of funding. Maybe the system itself is failing. Subscribe if you're tired of politicians defending broken institutions instead of demanding real change, because this fight over education is far from finished.